Hi, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Tiny Brains podcast. I'm Kevin Joyce, CEO at Tiny Brains, and with me, as always, is Peter Graham, the Brigadier of Brains. Say hello, Peter.
Good afternoon, all.
So, what we do on this podcast, for those of you who are new here, is every week we take a look at the biggest stories from XR from the previous week and have a little chat about them, share our thoughts. We're going to dive in with some pretty big news that we discussed previously as like a tease on this podcast, but that tease has now become something.
That tease has become something, and it's actually we mentioned it in a couple of different podcasts over the last 12 months, and this involves Palmer Luckey. Now he's been teasing that he's going to be getting back into XR and making some sort of headsets, but nobody's quite sure whether it's going to be military based or whether it's going to be consumer based. And now we know, and it is going to be military based, as a lot of us assumed it would be. But the twist is that he's actually taking over from Microsoft, or his company, Anduril, is taking over from Microsoft. And that's the IVAS military program that Microsoft originally signed with what they call the Department of Defense in the States.
Yeah.
They signed that back in 2022 with a possibility of it was a program that was going to earn them about $22 billion over, I think it was like a 5-10 year period. But Microsoft have been fudging it quite quite majorly, and so yes, Anduril have taken over.
So this is more of Microsoft getting further and further and further away from XR. Now, there is this thing in the games industry and tech industries to personify companies and say, oh, this company does this because of this and whatever else. And it's a very common thing to do, and I've done it many times myself. But if we're going to personify anyone, one of the things we can personify Microsoft for doing consistently is to be first and then completely ignore all the work they've done. And this has happened time and time again. And it feels like that's kind of what they're doing with XR. They had a wave of fantastic headsets. They had the HoloLens. And where are they now?
Yeah, that's it. Where Windows mixed reality famously died a death a little while ago, and
They were
yes,
at the time, they were fantastic headsets when they launched
yeah,
for the price they were being launched
yeah,
at. They weren't the top tier of headsets on the market, but they were fantastic for their price point. And there was a huge range of options. And they're literally just being killed with a Windows update now, just dead.
yeah. They had nice Windows integration as well. There was a beautiful Windows environment, kind of like you get with Steam VR, but yeah, all gone, and it is a bit of a shame. And this project, the IVAS, or it's called Integrated Visual Augmentation System that they did, was actually based on the HoloLens 2 at the time. And yes, now Android are taking over it. Oh, quite possibly one of the best headset makers out there. You got to give Lucky his dues. He did create the original Oculus Rift, so he's got a long history in the space. So he's probably a good partner to take over. They're going to be taking over all the hardware and stuff. They're still going to be collaborating with Microsoft because they're going to be using Microsoft Azure, their cloud system, so for all the software running. But apart from that, yes, we're going to see Lucky back in the XR space, but you're not going to get you're not going to get near these headsets, whatever they are.
Honestly, I'm going to stick with this line. I think the bigger news here is Microsoft backing further and further away from XR. Palmer coming back into XR. I don't think it's much of a surprise. He clearly loves XR. He's been around, even though he's not been working in the industry, he's been around the whole time, talking about it, going to events and so on and so forth. So Palmer being back, hi Palmer, that's not a big surprise. Microsoft moving further and further and further away. We did all hope there would be a HoloLens 3 one day, and maybe there'd be an Xbox headset or a headset that works with Xbox consoles.
Mhm.
None of this stuff is happening. Where is the Xbox themed Quest headset that we were talking about? This has not happened. So one of the biggest guys in tech moving further and further away from our industry.
Yeah, as Google moves back into it. So
Yeah, and Apple
yeah,
shows their hand.
exactly.
I've got a feeling this is reminding me of a different industry that's become super popular. Um, anyone remember Microsoft's early smartphones? Yeah. Anyone remember Microsoft's early tablets? Yeah. Not saying there's any kind of comparison here, but there totally is. Okay, moving on. We've got some chit chat from old Carmack. It's always lovely to hear Carmack's thoughts
Yeah,
on things.
another ex-Oculus person making the news, and we always love a bit of a chit chat from old Carmack because he's a bit of a tech whiz, and he was recently talking about he was talking about how big and how important Quest and standalone headsets have been for the industry, but he was also talking about software. And one of the things he talked about was the comparisons between Beat Saber and Half-Life's Alyx. Now, there are certainly two different thoughts of, whether Half-Life Alyx was a premium, influential game. But Carmack's saying, in actual fact, he feels Beat Saber was far more influential for VR in general than Alyx was.
I mean,
Do you think?
yeah, I mean, this seems really obvious to me. I'm not sure if I'm in the wrong camp in VR, but Half-Life Alyx is great, right? It's a fantastic VR experience. It was when it launched and it is now. But Beat Saber has done far more for VR than Half-Life Alyx. It's like saying that, I don't know, like uh, Age of Empires Mobile has been more influential than Candy Crush on phones. It's like, no way. Candy Crush has been the one that's been influential on phones, on smartphone gaming. It's like saying that, Elder Scrolls was better for console gaming than Mario. No, no, it wasn't. Mario was the one that brought console gaming to the mainstream audience. It seems super obvious to me, and I completely agree with Carmack.
Oh, I do as well. When you consider that, especially on devices like PSVR 1 and 2, Beat Saber was constantly at the top of the download charts in both North America and Europe, constantly, month after month. Whereas Half-Life Alyx never had that reach. It was only ever on Steam. If they'd maybe ported it to PSVR, or
I still don't think that's the case. No,
well, I know that's not the case, but it's also the wider ubiquity of it as well. I think it's
but I think even if it had gone to multiple formats, even if you could get it on Quest, it's still never going to have the range and impact of something like Beat Saber, simply because the immediacy of Beat Saber.
Mm.
Again, it's like saying that I don't know, like Gran Turismo compared to Mario Kart. Gran Turismo is a fantastic series that sells millions upon millions of copies every time there's a new iteration, but nowhere near as much as Mario Kart does. We're talking about how we're going to reach a larger audience, and how we're going to reach a larger audience is by taking the the gaming sheen off of gaming. I'm going to make you enjoy your time in VR without thinking, "Oh, I'm a nerdy gamer." And we're nerdy gamers. We love nerdy games, but not everybody does.
but Beat Saber has been around for many years now. We've not had the next step, have we? Either.
Gorilla Tag? I mean, maybe, but no. Yeah,
No.
Beat Saber is still the leading light here.
Yeah, very much so. Hence why
Okay.
at least Meta bought it. So they saw that in their future.
But talking about gaming and what's going to push us to the next level,
We've got a lot of
gaming without it appearing like gaming for mainstream audiences and whatever else, Sony showed their hand or lack thereof this week.
Yay, Sony State of Play arrived last week, and it was there was quite a few games for PSVR 5. There
PSVR
weren't as
5,
many. PS
PSVR 5.
PlayStation 5, PSVR 5. Oh,
Jumping ahead a bit there.
PlayStation 5, but there were at least there were some PSVR 2 games in there. There were only three. When they first made the announcement for State of Play, there wasn't any mention of PSVR 2, so at least we got three games. And those three games were The Midnight Walk, which is I'm personally looking forward to that one, by Moonhood and published by Fast Travel Games. That is actually coming out on the 8th of May. We've got Dreams of Another, which is it's a third person sort of exploration action game. That's due out sometime this year. And the other surprise was Five Nights at Freddy's Secret of the Mimic, which is due out on the 13th of June. So it's nice to see a few games arrive there. But one thing I don't know if you noticed, Kev, is the fact that all of these games support PSVR 2, but they're all flat screen games as well. So they do have VR support. Which do you think that's becoming a bit more of a trend? It's the case of like developers going, right, we've got to be on PSVR 5 I've said it again. Place PS5, so they can sell the numbers and then add in PSVR 2.
Yeah, I mean, this was a way things happened, a style that happened at the launch of the original PlayStation VR. Some games were all in on VR, but other games had VR option. I mean, the most famous one for PlayStation VR is, of course, Resident Evil 7 Biohazard.
Hmm.
That when you bought that on disc or digitally, you had both the standard flat screen version and the VR complete experience in one package. I don't see anything wrong with this. Um, I think for developers hedging their bets, it's good. I think for audiences that are like, hey, I'm really enjoying Five Nights at Freddy's, whatever. I don't know, there's so many of them. Um, this would be much scarier in VR. Maybe I'll get a VR headset. Great. No problem at all. There needs to be some games that remain VR only in order to tip those scales, but I don't think it has to be every game. I think having, as long as it's not just like a VR mini game that's in it. I remember like Ace Combat when that launched, everyone was like, "No, this isn't really, it's a side mission that you can play in VR." Um, when you've got full experiences in VR as part of that package, I don't see the problem.
Yeah, yeah. My only hope is that yes, when they do it like this, is that they develop for VR and take into account the VR sort of qualities that are required, rather than what you can get later on is like porting a flat screen game into VR, and they sort of try and mangle a few immersive controls in there, locomotion, whatever else, but it's
Yeah,
not
it still needs VR at its heart in order to work.
exactly. So yeah,
Okay.
but
So we're going to wrap this up because we're running out of time. So we're going to move on to the biggest news in gaming this week, which is Civilization, right? That's it. Civilization on Quest. Buy it. Simple as.
yes, it's coming out this year. It's due this spring, so hopefully the next couple of months. Civilization 7 recently dropped last week for most major platforms in terms of flat screen, and it is coming to Meta Quest and just Quest 3 and 3S though. So it's going to have mixed reality support. Or what are you going to say there, Kev? You're going to jump
I
in?
was going to say, yes, this is great news and everything. We're running out of time, so we're going to wrap this up. But Civilization, if correct me if I'm wrong, is published by 2K Games, Take-Two Interactive, whose CEO has formerly been very anti-VR. So this is a step. Support this game.
Go for it.
All right, everybody, thank you very much for watching. We'll see you again next week.